again to the Church Planners Toolbox. Your host, Justin, with my pastor, Pastor Josh Levesque.
Hello.
Welcoming you to our Church Planners timeline. We're going through the 2-year timeline, approaching the launch Sunday for our church plant. Following my story as we go to launch Detroit Baptist Church and just taking in all those sorts of wisdom and things to know as we're going through that timeline. We're at a great stage right now. We've been talking about determining our strategy. As we've been talking through this, we just talked about setting a launch budget. And so if you haven't watched that one yet, go ahead and check that one out. That one's a great episode. But today we're going to be talking about setting our launch goals. So this is a crucial part of determining our strategy, setting launch goals. Pastor Josh, what are some things to know about setting our launch goals as we start off here?
Yeah. So in the realm of the foundation stage that we're talking about, I just did the calculation here. We are about 75 weeks away from launch for Detroit Baptist.
Okay. Yeah.
So, at this point, all of this stuff should be done, which it is. I'd say we've thought through all these things, and we've actually, I think we're a little ahead of the game because we're on to some of the initiation, because you were just able to basically the last 3 months have been initiation for us.
Sure.
And so a lot of this is kind of, this is the work that you do before you go public in a lot of ways.
I see.
That's what the foundation stage is kind of in my mind, is having, we talked about having the branding and the initial website but also then having the plan and the budget and everything ready to go so that you can, kick things off, with a solid plan in place.
Which just this last Sunday just started our official deputation.
Yes.
Promoting our church plant.
Yeah.
So that was really fun being able to present our ministry and everything, seeing the excitement from all the churches we've seen so far. Yeah.
Oh, it's good. So you guys are like 3 churches in?
Yeah.
3 churches in and a whole lot to go. So, yeah. And I'm sure, you're already seeing, like, when you start going to churches, you're going to start getting questions from pastors and people about, where are you going to meet? What part of town?
Yep.
How can we help? What do you need? When are you going to actually launch? When are you going to move there? Where are you going to live? People want to know all these things.
Oh yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to have answers for all of these things. But if you have a good enough plan and you're confident, people will believe in your mission and be willing to be part of it and get behind it.
Which is a good leeway for here, because it's good to have a set foundation of your goals. So you kind of know what you're going for. You kind of know what you're aiming towards when you're out presenting your ministry to other churches. So as we are setting our launch goals here, how should we set goals? I guess is a general question to start this off with.
Yeah, so this is like the last step that we have in the foundation stage. So part of it is, taking all of the research and planning that you've done and then putting it down on paper. This timeline itself is a tool to help you set goals. We've created this in a way where you can use it to, overlay your own timeline. And again, start at launch and start working backwards and start putting all these things down. So I think part of setting goals is creating a launch timeline itself, which was our episode or 2 ago. We talked about setting a launch timeline.
Yeah.
That's a goal in and of itself, is having a date, because that kind of puts the pressure of having a deadline, I guess, for your goals.
Sure, yeah.
And, having some something tangible to measure yourself against. Like if we need to have this by launch, how far are we? And then we talked about setting a budget. A budget's also a goal.
Yeah, sure.
A goal is like this, how much money we're going to need. And so if you have your launch date set and you have your budget set, well, those are the 2 things you need to come up with a percentage of how much have we raised.
Sure, yeah.
And, are we on track to raise enough? Are we on pace? Do we need to do a little more? So all these things start to come together. But when we're talking about setting goals, part of it's the timeline, part of it's the budget, but part of it is just starting to set some numerical targets that can help motivate you, and give yourself something that you can measure, a way to measure your success, I suppose. Okay.
Is there a good way to give yourself the right number to go to? Like, what would be, like, can you make your goal too ambitious, or is there a way to make your goal not ambitious enough? How do you kind of gauge that line there?
Yeah, that's the trick. Obviously, you know, Proverbs says that where there's no vision, the people perish. And so you got to have vision, and you want it to be big. You want it to be ambitious. You want it to be faith-filled. Like,
Sure.
So you want it to be something that is, we're going to need God to do this, a God goal. There's lingo that people throw around, having kind of that big audacious goal. That's kind of like a little bit of like a North Star kind of thing to navigate towards. Like, that's what we're trying to get to. And so, one of those goals should be a fundraising goal. We talked about that, but having a goal of, hey, we're going to raise this much money. And maybe you'll raise more, maybe you'll raise less, but you'll raise more than you will if you didn't have a goal.
Sure. Yeah, I see.
You should also, your fundraising goal should also think beyond your launch at this point. So last episode, we talked about setting a launch fund goal. How much money am I going to raise specifically for that launch? But when you're fundraising, you're actually raising money for post-launch. So we usually think of that in terms of monthly. How much money, how many dollars a month do we need to run the church? So at that point, you're probably thinking about, how much am I going to pay myself? What are my ongoing facility costs going to be? How much do I want to regularly be investing into outreach programs and things post-launch? What other costs am I going to have? Administrative type costs. That's all something to consider. So you want to not just have that launch budget, but have a operational budget in place, even if it's not exact. But be able to put actual categories to whatever your monthly goal is. Because we're going to talk about deputation specifically and how to start doing it. But if you're going to raise money, it's going to vary from person to person. I've seen some people say, hey, I've got a good job that I can work so that I don't need to pay myself, but I just need money for a facility. I need money for outreach. I need a little bit. So maybe your deputation goal is, $3,000 to $5,000 a month or something.
Yeah.
But if you are going to try to raise money to be full-time, then that goal is going to need to be a little higher. But just figure out how much you need to live.
Sure.
What's your goal? Are you going to try to be full-time? And just personally, I'd encourage you to try to raise the money to be full-time. If you can, it's worth your time. Especially in that first stage, if you can raise 3 to 5 years of full-time support to be able to really give yourself to the work in the initial stage, it's worth it. Sometimes it's approached of like hey, I'll kind of work part-time up till I can be full-time. That works too, but I think there's something to be said of doing it the other way. Like the baby church could probably use some extra investment of yourself and of your time as well.
Sure. Yeah.
I've also heard some people say that, hey, when you just start a church, there isn't actually that much work to do. So you could afford to work part-time up front, and there's strategic advantages to working part-time in your community to make contacts.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. All that's great. So maybe you do want to do that strategically. Okay, I do want to work part-time so that I don't have to raise as much money, so that I can meet people. But even in that, I wouldn't say it's probably wise to work full-time and try to launch a church.
Sure, yeah.
If you're going to work part-time, do it strategically and have a plan to kind of work your way to full-time. You can. Now, I'm not doing that to disparage anybody who, does work full-time. There's some great opportunities that lend itself well for church planting that are flexible. I know lots of guys who do bus driving, like full-time pastors that do bus driving for schools. And it's a good thing. They get benefits and, good salary. And it's very small amount of hours and commitment. It's very set. It's very predictable.
Yeah.
So they can plan their schedules around it. I don't know. I've seen some things that lend itself better to that. There's lots of remote work and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's all part of the consideration of the goal is like, how much money do I need? How much money am I going to raise? Because then, once you know how much money you're going to raise, that's going to kind of tell you a little bit. You can start to calculate how long do I need to raise that money?
Sure.
Because if you're like, hey, we've got, I've got a part-time job already, or, and I've seen some people in a position where it's like, hey, I have a pension or something, or I'm retired from something that so that they have money already. They don't necessarily need to raise money for themselves, so that the deputation doesn't have to be too long. So then maybe you can say like, hey, I'm only going to go for 6 months or less than a year or something. But if you're going to need to raise a substantial amount of money, so like $8,000 to $10,000 in monthly support, you're going to need a year and a half, 2 years to do that, probably, at least.
Yeah. No, I see that. So like what you're saying, it depends on what stage you're in, what opportunities you have when you're setting that. And I think to what you're saying, it would be ideal for you to at least be fully free to go into the church plan or have a part-time job in there. And not, like you're saying, not to disparage anyone who has a full-time job, but maybe that's not going to be your default go-to. And if the Lord allows you, for you to have a full-time job, that's fine, work with it. But I think especially, we talked about this last episode where before the church plant is an ideal time for you to be raising your support, because that's the most support that you're going to be getting is leading up to your launch.
Yeah.
And so it's a good opportunity for you to be able to raise all raise all you'll need so that you can be paid at least some in part to be able to run that church in its initiation stage.
Yeah. And then I think, one of the things that actually helps with fundraising is having that launch planned and having that launch set before you set off on it, giving yourself a reasonable runway, but then letting that be the runway. So rather than saying we're going to raise money until we reach this amount.
Okay. Yeah.
Or we're going to raise money until we reach our launch, and then we're going to launch with what we have, a little bit. And, let that be a motivator. It was for us, as we're seeing it coming up, like, hey, we're going. And, once we launch, we're not going to be able to be at churches every Sunday. We're going to be running our church. There's still limited opportunity. Like we could go on do a missions conference through some weekdays or take midweeks or something like that. Yeah. And we did some of that post-launch to kind of fulfill commitments that we had already made through scheduling. Yeah. And I mean, we're a couple years in and, just every circumstance is different. We still take occasional meetings to raise funds, but just as you need it. But, I had some people advise me in my initial goals to, hey, bump those goals up a little bit. Like it doesn't hurt to have a higher goal. Try to raise what you can. Because inevitably, after you launch, your ability to raise money is going to be lessened. And, that money that you raise is going to eventually decline. Right. Some people support you for a year, some people for 2 years, 3 years, but there's going to be a natural decline on that initial raising. So, you're never going to have as much support raised as when you launch in essence. So make sure it's going to be enough to launch you and then sustain you to a point where the church can sustain itself. Yeah. To make sure you have that in goal. So, money isn't the goal. The mission is.
Yeah, that's good.
But you need the money to fund it and to propel it.
Yeah, no, that's good. So, like, say for your fundraising goal or any other kind of goal that you have, what do you do? Because you set a good goal that you might not reach fully. What do you do when you don't reach your goal?
Yeah, well, we could talk about just like kind of the psychology of setting goals themselves. I'm sure everybody's heard of like what SMART goals are. Setting goals that are measurable and achievable. And so there's some good, earthly wisdom that we can apply to just goal setting so that you want to set something that's achievable. That's not impossible. Yeah. But with church planting, we understand this is not simply a physical exercise. It's a spiritual one.
Hmm.
And so I think it is maybe good to push yourself a little bit, set some goals that do require some faith. Maybe that's, launching a little earlier than you thought you could, or, raising a little more money than you think you could, or setting a goal that's a little bigger for outreach or for your launch Sunday. A little bit of faith exercised, is good. But goals, I heard a pastor say at one of our church planning seminars that, a goal well set is half met. And that really hit me because it's a thought that I had, but I don't know if I had those words to put to it of, there's a couple ways you could look at it. Sometimes I would set a goal that we already had made some progress towards. So like, we had some really early investments of like, I think $20,000 or something. Some of that was from our ascending church and like some people that wanted to really invest in us early. And so then when I set my big goal of like, hey, we're going to raise $50,000, I included the 20,000 in that, right? So we're raising 50,000, but hey, we're this far there already. And, let that momentum of those other investments motivate the remaining amount, right? So that's one way of like, hey, we're setting this goal, but we're it's achievable, and we're showing people that we've already made progress towards it, and letting people believe that this is something that God can do. He's already providing this. But you could look at that saying the other way of like a goal well set is half met, in that if you set a goal that's achievable, people are going to see it as achievable and maybe be more willing to give towards it. So it's almost the goal itself will help the goal be met. In other words, like if it's too far and you're like, we want to raise $500,000, people are gonna be like,
yeah, almost like it's achievable in the sense like, oh, we can grasp this, like we can hold on to this.
Yeah. So that's part of it. Again, don't just arbitrarily set goals. Like I said, with the launch fund goal, like don't just say like, oh, $100,000, that sounds good. Like we could do that, or $50,000, we could do that. Actually start writing down all the things that you need, researching, putting reasonable costs to them, and see what that adds up to. And if it adds up to $50,000, then you can say, honestly, we need $50,000.
Yeah.
It's not a pie in the sky. It's very reasonable stuff. So make sure you have numbers behind whatever your goals are.
Yeah.
Even for your monthly amount, and then I've always found it best to just be very upfront with pastors and churches about what are behind those goals. It always kind of bothered me that like we always heard, percentage, like, hey, we're 50% towards our needed support, but like 50% of what, I never knew that. And a lot, I know sometimes maybe missionaries felt like they needed to be modest about that. Like maybe churches won't understand why we're raising so much or whatever, but it almost made me more suspicious of like, why aren't you telling me how much money you're raising? I always found churches appreciated because we always, we communicated our percentage, but we always communicated that in the terms of the amount. Like, hey, we're 50% towards our $8,000 a month that we're raising.
Yeah.
And I felt like that always motivated people to give and, be willing to invest in us, that they saw how much we were asking for and how much their contribution would make towards the total. I think that helped us raise money even faster. So having good goals and having honest goals, I guess, would be the thing. Like goals that are, people can see and are wide open. Like this is exactly what it is. That helped, I think, get people behind what we were doing. So that's one way. I guess your initial question was how ambitious to be.
Yeah, how ambitious, and then like how do you navigate not being able, like not reaching your goal? Which you kind of answered that with the philosophy of the goal.
Yeah. Goals are just something to shoot at. You're inevitably, you're probably going to fall short in some, you're probably going to exceed some. But if you didn't have a goal, you'd have no way of measuring how you were doing in those things. And sometimes you learn. We'll talk about some other goal setting, but like some of the initial goals that I set for, how many people we'd have by year 1 and things like that. Like I was way off. and I realized a couple years in, like why I was way off. I was miscalculating some things that I didn't quite understand at that point. And so you'll learn and then you'll set better goals.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Okay.
So I guess the takeaway from this would be, really try your best to calculate, put all the numbers together, put everything you need to make an accurate goal, but at least make a goal. Like it's important to just have something out there so that you have a number to drive for, you have something to work for. And if it is off, if you end up being off in that goal, that's okay. Just keep going at it. And
yeah, but goals also, like, you want to achieve them because then that's exciting and that gives you more momentum. So try to do your research and set some goals that you think you can achieve. That's fair. It's not cheating or anything like that. There's wisdom to setting achievable goals, because then people are going to be motivated by you meeting your goals, including yourself. Even if it's just like some internal goal that you never told anybody about, you're still going to beat yourself up if you don't achieve it. So set good goals, that, require faith, that do stretch you, but that are reasonable, that are based in reality, and actually based on numbers. So beyond your fundraising goals, start thinking about your outreach goals. By outreach goals, start considering the scale of your initial outreach. I'd encourage you to do door-to-door outreach, wherever you're going.
yeah.
But start doing the math. Get on the post office's website is a great tool. There are mailing apps and things that you can use to calculate how many households are in certain zip codes and things like that, just so you can start counting, like, how many households are we talking about? So you can start calculating how far would 10,000 go? How far is 20,000 going to go? But we set the goal. We wanted to canvass every home in Dearborn. Now that was like every single family residence. We didn't include apartments or anything like that. And it was like 40 something thousand homes. So that was our goal, was like 40,000. We ended up ordering like 60,000 John and Romans, and we still have a couple thousand of them 5 years later. So we ordered a lot more than we needed, and have done other John and Romans since then. But praise God, with the help of a lot of other churches, we were able to do that in our first summer. Canvass all those homes, and
awesome.
Because we did it that way, like almost everybody that came in that first year, even 2 years, was the result of that outreach. They came and we'd ask them, why'd you come? They're like, I got this thing on my door. And we're like, 2 years ago, you got that thing on your door? Yeah, 2 years ago, I got this thing on my door.
That's awesome.
So do that, but start calculating how wide you're going to go, what neighborhoods, and then, how much is that going to cost? So that's another exciting goal that you can set, that you can then start to measure, is like, hey, 10,000 homes, 20,000 homes. And then as you're getting closer to that, you're knocking that off and you're showing people the progress. And then as you're motivating, hey, churches, come help us. We need, we're 10,000 homes away, and, you can come down and do 5,000 of those, Goals motivate people to get involved. And help you measure your progress. And then some of that goal can start to boil down into a launch Sunday attendance goal.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, because what you're expecting to have attending on your first Sunday, is that going to affect how many doors, how many places you're going to outreach with?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so, because there is some trickle down to those numbers, and I've seen people try to put actual formulas to it. I don't know that it is a science. But like, if you're going to get 10,000 pieces of literature out, I mean, can we anticipate almost 1,000 to 1? Like, for every 1,000 pieces that go out, is that going to turn into one person at our launch service?
I mean, it might depend on your area too, right? Like how receptive people are.
Yeah. So like, I've seen that 1,000 to 1 number in different places. So, maybe you start there. But, so we did 40,000. So could we expect 40 people? But like, our community, half of our community is Muslim. So we knew half those houses were going to go to Muslim people. So even in doing the 40,000, we were almost maybe thinking 2,000 to 1, or 2,500 to 1. Trying to almost adjust for that number. So whatever that calculation is, that just needs to be your own wisdom, knowing your community, and things like that. And I don't know that it's necessarily wise to like advertise heavily a launch Sunday goal, unless it's more of an internal goal for your team of like, hey, we want to have this many people.
Okay.
But even if you don't have a goal necessarily, you got to have a number, because how many chairs are you going to set up on your first Sunday?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly.
You got to have something in your head of like, what are we going to expect? And that's where having a launch team, recruiting people ahead of time, and then knowing like, hey, we have this many people for sure. And then encouraging all those people, can you all bring somebody? You can almost then, whatever my launch team is, let's double that. And you can use some of those numbers, like doubling your launch team or dividing your outreach numbers by 1,000. There's a few ways you can try to arrive at a ballpark of like, hey, it'd be great if we had 50 people at our launch, or it'd be great if we had 100 people at our launch. And it depends. If you're in a real rural community, maybe 20 people at your launch is great, because that's as a percentage of your community, like that's huge.
Sure.
Or if you're in a more populated area, maybe you can anticipate a little bit higher, but again, it's going to change. So all that has to have some flexibility in it. Again, don't say we're going to launch with 1,000 people without having if you're going to do that, then you got to have some reason to say why you're going to be able to do that. Like maybe you're going to have a full year of lead up advertising. Maybe you're going to recruit a team of 100 people.
Yeah. Like that would be the manpower needed to do something like that.
To have a launch of 1,000, right? Like you got to have a team of 100, right? Like literally. So, don't set a goal without having some semblance of reason to it, and some, knowledge of like, hey, we can achieve this.
So you're saying this is a goal that you might have for yourself personally in your launch team, but not necessarily advertising for everyone to see in terms of your launch Sunday attendance?
Yeah. And don't put too much pressure on that launch Sunday.
Okay.
I don't know. Some people will put a lot on that of like, hey, you've got to launch with, 1,000 people if you want to have, if you want to have a church of 100. These things start small and they grow.
Yeah, sure.
So know your community, know your team, know your strategy. Maybe your strategy isn't a large launch. I still think you should have a launch.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not a large launch. Maybe it is, a little more smaller, sustainable. And then your goal is just growth.
Maybe your goal, you should want to have a large launch. I think we should all want that.
Well, what's your definition of large?
Sure, true.
It depends on your facilities.
That's true too.
Yeah. It's like, what can this place, if we find a place, it's like, hey, this is something we can afford. It's in the area that we like. And, we can seat 50 people in here. There's your goal.
Yeah.
Fill it up.
Yeah, there you go.
Fill it up.
Yeah, good.
And I think we talked before about, the expectation of, you're going to have a launch and, your second Sunday is probably going to be half of what your launch Sunday was.
Yeah.
Like, that's a natural thing. But that means you got to try to get extra people there on your launch Sunday so that you have some of those people there on your second Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just the nature of it a little bit.
I was just thinking this might be something that we cover later. I don't know if this would be something covered in a later episode, but if you have something in your outreach material leading up to your launch Sunday in terms of a RSVP or a planning to attend kind of thing where you can get some feedback on who's going to be there. Is that something we'll cover later or?
Sure. I mean, we talked about setting like preview meetings is a way to start meeting people.
Sure.
But so one of the goals should be a blanket goal of like, we're going to get this many homes. We're going to, put out this many things. And maybe that's 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, whatever. But you should have a goal in that is how many contacts you've collected. Because part of the goal, and we're going to talk about an initiation in a second.
Okay.
Not in a second. In our next episode, I think. Initiating some of your database so that you have something to start collecting people. So as you're doing all this, you're wanting to collect anybody who's interested at all. And having some of those forms and things on that. So like if anybody's interested, they can, give us your email to get a free New Testament or to, whatever it is to gauge interest.
Yeah.
On your Facebook ad, message us for more info. You're trying to collect. So if you're going to do 10,000, set a goal of like, hey, we want to collect 1,000 people. And then then you might be able to say like, hey, if we can collect 1,000 contacts, can we get 100 of them at our launch Sunday?
Sure. Yeah.
So you've got reasonable goals of trying to boil that down. And obviously in all of this, our goal initially is not just advertising, but evangelism, right?
Sure.
Like
Yeah,
all this
exactly.
material
Yeah.
that's going out should be gospel material.
Yep.
Every follow-up that you do with somebody that's interested is an evangelistic follow-up. You're sharing the gospel with people.
Yeah.
And so the goal should be like, hey, can we see, if we're going to have 1,000 contacts, how many people can we see saved? Can we see 100 people saved through our initial outreach or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great goal to have.
And, maybe you can have baptisms on your launch Sunday. How cool would that be?
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
Because that makes, you want to have a good amount of people in your launch Sunday, but being able to do some of those things, like have baptism, see people saved, that's just a great holy time for the Lord to have in your first Sunday, to be able to have those things, host those things.
Yeah.
So I think those are worthy goals as well.
Yeah. Sure. And so, yeah, it's a matter of making sure you're setting a goal, but then that you're doing the work to actually achieve it. And you're going to have to put in a lot more goal. So, if you want to see 100 people at your launch service, that's an awesome goal. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Because I think seeing 100 people at your launch service, probably means that you can get started with an average attendance of probably at least half that, going for your first year. And that'd be great. Because I do think there is kind of a magic number of sustainability when you can average, 65, 70. That's kind of that spot. So maybe you want to be there right away. But again, it's all easier said than done.
Yep.
So realistic goals. Don't let your goals be ego driven. Don't let your goals be compared to anybody else. Like, hey, that guy,
that's true.
That guy had 100 people at his launch service. I want to do that. Well, you don't know that guy. You don't know why that guy had 100 there. Half of those could have been, people from his home church, or, he could have, sometimes people have, they're going to a community where they grew up in. So they just have a lot of friends or family, that's naturally going to come, and you may not have those advantages.
Yeah.
So it might not be a reasonable goal for you.
Or even comparing rural with urban, that'll affect your first Sunday.
Sure. We talked a little bit about that. But yeah, set attendance goals, set outreach goals, set some team goals. I think you should have a goal of and one of the things to base your launch Sunday attendance off of is how many people do I have committed to serve?
Okay.
Because you want to make sure you have enough people to actually handle the attendance of people coming. Because if I'm going to have that many people, then I have to have a nursery. I got to do something with kids. I got to have greeters. I got to have, I got to have people to help me with this. And you don't want to stretch yourself too thin right away. But there's also, the wisdom of, it takes a crowd to draw a crowd.
Sure.
A little bit. So you can help yourself by recruiting other churches to send people.
Yep.
Initially, maybe for that whole first year, you can pad that attendance with some guaranteed attenders, because that's just going to help a new person that shows up. They show up and hey, there's other people here. Like I'm not the only one. It's not weird.
Exactly.
That really does help, and we did a little bit of that. So you can help. That's kind of just a built-in guaranteed thing. Yeah. Because it does take a crowd to draw a crowd a little bit. It can be, and that's what the launch is for. I can try to get a crowd there so that first day is exciting, and I know there's going to be a lot of people because we put so much. But don't neglect the spiritual goals. Like I said, part of your goals should be how many gospel conversations are we going to have out of all this? How many souls saved are we going to see in this initial launch phase? How many discipleship relationships am I going to be able to set up? Yeah. How much time am I going to spend in prayer over this? Like, those are the goals we shouldn't neglect. Because it's not just about the numbers, it's a spiritual endeavor.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I gotta keep track of all those things, the numerical ones, but also the spiritual goals. All of those are so crucial. We might have talked a lot about this in terms of our setting our launch budget earlier in the last episode. We might have covered some areas on this, but in terms of more of the goal areas now, what are some of the elements that we're looking for when we're setting a launch fund goal?
Like I said, just make sure it's based on actual objects and actual numbers. Build it up, but I think it's good to have a monthly support amount set with the budget to back it up. Have a launch fund goal set with the budget to back it up. And then, have all these goals set with some thinking behind how you arrived at that. And then what having the goals and having the timeline will do is it'll allow you to start to then plan the work. So you can start backing up, like, what do I need to be doing this week or this month to arrive at that goal? And that's what I've tried to do with this timeline.
Yeah, exactly.
Is try to think through some of those things and then try to put some reasonable goals in place. So use something like this timeline. There's other ones out there online. This one was based on, I collected a few of them online and had a few from other church planters that gave me stuff. And then, just through our own plans, kind of synthesized them into this that kind of fit our model and our goal. So this whole timeline is really a tool to help you set a strategy, set some goals, and just have something to measure yourself against, motivate your time and your action. And then after that, it's, you do all this thinking, you have this strategy in place, develop the vision, discern your calling, develop your vision, determine your strategy. Then it's really a matter of just putting your head down and doing it.
Yeah.
Run with it. Go
put your head to the plow and just get it done.
Yeah. And then don't look back. Give it all you got, and then give whatever timeline, whatever runway you're able to set for yourself. Just work hard, work the plan. To fail the plan is the plan to fail. So don't do that. Have some goals that are set with some wise counsel.
Yep.
That are actually looking beyond your launch Sunday too. That are all setting up sustainability.
Yeah. I think that's one important element of this is when you're setting up for your first Sunday, you're not just setting up for your first Sunday, then that's it. When you all these goals, all this fundraising, all these things you're doing, you're setting up for the first Sunday to set the rest of the life of the church thereafter.
Yeah. And I kind of had the number in my head all the way through, and I don't know where it came from. It's just something that I always thought about is like, I always tried to think about our first 100 Sundays, in terms of our equipment and all those things, and our team, and even my preaching. Was like, what am I gonna do like for our first 100 Sundays? And that's a good goal because you want to think sustainably. Am I going to be able? Because if you put so much in your first Sunday is like such a production. It's like, can I do this 100 more times every week? Like, is this too much for us? Go all out, do some big things, but know that you got to do it again, and you got to come back the next Sunday, and the next Sunday after that, and the next Sunday after that. When you're thinking about even your launch schedule and calendar and stuff, like, just keep it in mind that in a church planting, it's all on you. It's a lot of energy. And depending on how much team you have, there's still a lot that falls on you. So make sure you're not stretching yourself too much, that you're building sustainable systems that you can maintain for 100 Sundays.
I think that's really key. You want a good first launch Sunday. You want it to be good. You want it to be well done. But is this something you're going to be able to carry on week by week? Can you prolong this type? And you might put a few extra things in your first launch Sunday. There may be things you put more in, but you're not going to make, like you're saying, such a huge production on your first Sunday that the rest of it looks like poor compared to it. Like you're going to want to sustain like most of it, as you're leading up to your next 100 Sundays.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of those questions about sustainability was like, our services were simpler up front. We didn't have special music every week. We still don't have special music every week just because it's not something that we can sustain. We don't have that many people. We didn't start with a full service schedule our first year. Our first year was just a Sunday morning service. and then we started adding layers onto it.
Yeah.
So we tried to start simply. We started with a children's service, which we were able to do because of some of the team that we had.
Yeah.
But maybe that's not part of your sustainability. Maybe you can't start with a full children's service and it's an integrated service at first. Yeah, if that's what you got to do. Do it. We didn't start a youth group till 3-4 years in, something like that.
Yeah.
Started them when we could.
Mm-hmm.
And the pace at which we were doing outreach pre-launch wasn't a pace that we were going to do outreach post-launch because we had so many other churches helping us.
Sure.
We were able to do that. And so like what we did in our first summer of outreach, we've been working for 4 years now to try and retread all that ground that we did in one summer with a lot of help.
Yeah, really.
But it's just a slower pace, but it's what we can handle.
Yeah, exactly.
So set goals that motivate you, but don't be a slave to it. Adjust your goals if you need to. Sure. If you're reaching it, you say, hey, we can do more. Set a higher goal. Yeah. If you realize like, wow, I don't know what I was thinking when I set that goal, let's lower that. That's okay too. Just be honest with people and be upfront with the goals and what they actually represent.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome, Pastor Josh. I love all of this, and I love talking about determining strategy, and then specifically today, setting our launch goals. Really excited for our next episode. We're going to be moving on from the foundation stage and going on to our initiation stage. So that's going to be more about some of the things that we're actually doing. We're going to be doing some stuff, getting some advertising out there. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to our next episodes coming up.
Yeah, it's initiation. So it's putting the plan into play. But you got to have the plan beforehand. Don't just make it up as you go. Put it into play. And then timeline wise, we're looking at that year before launch.
Okay. Yeah.
So 75 to 50 weeks pre-launch, kicking everything off so that, when you're 1 year from launch, everything's already in motion. That's kind of the goal of this timeline anyways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I look forward to that. And specifically, the next episode, we're going to be talking about initiating our marketing. So that's going to be really fun. Just talking about getting your name out there as a church plant. And that's going to be really awesome. So if you're able to attend our next episode in the Church Planners Toolbox, we'd love to have you there. Otherwise, hope we're doing well. If you have any questions that you've come across while you're watching these episodes, feel free to reach out to us. But we thank you so much for attending the Church Planners Toolbox podcast. We'll see you next time.